I'm definitely glad to be back here again this year. I came to the first one, and it was wonderful, but this one's even better. And I'm very grateful for the theme this year. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite quotes from Bucky. Don't change things by fighting the existing reality. Replace it with a more attractive model. I paraphrased it a little bit. But what I'm going to try to present to you is my attempt in my personal life to create that more attractive model. And a lot of the people have touched on it tonight, that it's important about how these subjects are framed and communicated, because a lot of it, it's very negative. You have to avoid oblivion, and we have to deny ourselves the way of life that we're used to, and it's very negative and detracting. But it isn't. That is untrue, and that's what I want to share with you. My personal experience in trying to create a life that was more in balance with the natural environment. So we started doing that about 10 years ago in researching how to build a home that would be more energy efficient. And to be totally honest, I started building the home to create an environment that would not give me migraine headaches. I personally get migraine headaches. And a lot of the triggers for those are VOCs, which are petroleum-based products in your environment that emit fumes, other different types of petroleum-based cleaning products. If I don't get enough natural lighting, so we set out to try to figure out how to make this environment that got a ton of natural light, didn't have a lot of VOCs in it, but then wasn't just in the winter releasing all of its energy out through the windows. So in doing that, we came across this set of design principles that takes into consideration our orientation to the nearest star, and which is, of course, is the sun. And if you calculate the angle of the sun as it strikes the structure that you're going to live in, you want it to have maximum exposure in the winter, and you want it to be in shade in the summer. You also in the summer would like to see a nice cool breeze coming through. So completely without the aid of technological innovation, and really returning back to a way of living before the Industrial Revolution, where people didn't try to tech their way out of figuring out how to live in harmony with what was laid down for us in the beginning, but trying to create this false reality for ourselves that's achieved through technology. And I definitely don't want to sound like I have anything against technology. That's a very vital component towards averting this global climate catastrophe. That needs to be there. But I think the prime thing to do is to begin to build structures or renovate current structures that are in balance and harmony with the natural environment. So, through doing this, our house is 3,000 square feet, and on the winter solstice, which is around December 22nd, almost 2,000 square feet of that house receives direct sunlight internally. There's no windows on the north side, just a few up at the top to let in some light, and there's none on the east and west ends, because that's where all the solar gain happens in the late afternoon and the morning. But the south side is floor-to-ceiling glass, but it has an overhang. So the sun, where we're at in the winter, sits low on the southern horizon. So all that natural sunlight comes in, and we use concrete floors. We use a lot of masonry on the inside that receives all of that free solar energy and stores it, and it just heats that environment up. And then in the evening, of course, the sun goes down, and all of that masonry releases the energy that is stored throughout the day. So it creates this real balance. But then here in the summer, the sun is more overhead, as we, the tip of the earth tips towards the sun. So that overhang puts the entire house in direct shade beginning on the summer solstice. So it creeps in and out between those two solstices. Now, that was just, trying to get in alignment with what is, instead of trying to engineer something, based on the way we wish things were. And through doing that and calculating all that math and looking at the way ancient cultures used to build their homes and structures, before we had HVAC and all these things that could create this false interior environment, they spent a lot of time observing nature and observing nature's patterns and the passing of seasons and figuring out prevailing winds and sun angles. And they did all that through geometry. And the definition of geometry is geo, earth, and meter, measure, the measurement of the earth, or just not so grand, just the natural environment around you, to observe it and measure it. And through doing that, you begin to see these certain repeated forms and structures emerge. Like even when we calculated the angle of the sun for our house, it comes in at a certain angle, and if you know what the height of your wall is, and you want to create shade, if it's coming in at a 27-degree angle, you project out an overhang that blocks that, but then in the winter it's below that, so it comes in. And you use the Pythagorean theorem to figure all that out. And that is information, is BC knowledge. So we have the information that we need. We have all the knowledge that we need. Our ancestors had it. We've just been fooled in the last 100 years or so, and that's a very, very short time period within the whole, time period of humanity. And even prehistory, when things were passed around in an oral tradition, they utilized mythology more and embodied all that sacred knowledge in stories. It's a real indication of what our opinion of ancient wisdom is in today's society when the word myth has become synonymous with something that's false. Even the idea of the Mythbusters, a myth is a lie now. But the true definition of mythology is a means of communicating meaning. Science, in all of its glory, can only tell us how anything works, but they cannot tell us why anything works. And again, technology is going to be a very important part of finding out energy solutions for everybody. But if we can reconnect with our immediate natural environment, we can cut the power base out of a lot of these companies that we're currently beholden to. And when you start to do for yourself and you don't necessarily need as much energy from a coal-fired power plant, then they lose all of their power. Literally, I guess. But our home, we had our energy bill audited, and I wish that I could afford photovoltaics and wind power and stuff like that. But just through design and getting in harmony with, like I said, the nearest star, our home operates at 1/3 of what the same square footage in our longitude and latitude would be, or a 70% reduction. So, and we're a family of 5, and I don't really do anything to curtail anybody's behavior about leaving lights on. I try to tell them, but children are going to do what they're going to do, and we're running 5 different electronic devices in the house, and computers and TVs, and so we're really living a 20th century lifestyle in there. It's not Amish, which is terrific, but we have all of the information we need. I think what we don't have is a good competing myth that would replace the existing mythology. Bucky saw it a long time ago, and it's interesting to note that the biggest influence in his life, according to him, was his Aunt Margaret Fuller, who was an expert on mythology. She was passionate about understanding mythology. And she was, if you don't know, our first feminist. And she was the matriarch of the whole transcendentalist movement, which of course spawned Henry David Thoreau, who gave us the concept of civil disobedience, who then of course influenced Gandhi in all of his wonderful efforts, who then of course influenced Martin Luther King. So Margaret Fuller and her wisdom really truly changed the world, and all the way up through her nephew, Buckminster. And it is the same, his life's goal and his whole mission was really the same as hers, where if, you personify the earth or the natural environment as a nurturing place, and it gives us our life, it supports us. Traditionally, a nurturing spirit is a feminine spirit. So, to love this planet is kind of a feminist movement. But, of course, for things to be, reproductive and to move forward, it has to be a masculine presence, and, within a mythological tradition, especially of the native people of North America, the sun represented that. So the interaction between the two is where we exist. So given a lot of consideration to the sun beyond just, photovoltaic panels, which are absolutely important and wonderful, but, I couldn't afford them. So, but you can just align to it through a natural process. So to me, all of that was really, really eye-opening and amazing to see that through geometry you can lower your carbon footprint, you can lower your energy bill. And I would love to see the energy efficiency of a home factored into its audit or its value after maybe a year of occupancy. That might encourage capitalist thinking to begin to build homes that were more energy efficient if they thought they were going to have a higher appraisal value. I mean, that's one thing that we can do to move the ball forward a little bit there. And again, getting back to this idea of mythology and the power of it in combination especially with geometry and some of these other ancient traditions to solve our current contemporary problems. We've been to this crossroads before as a people, just not globally. It's happened locally in small populations, but now we're a global community and it's happening on a global scale. But as soon as, especially right around here in this area, the Mississippian culture, the native culture there, at Cahokia Mounds, that was the largest civilization on the planet, tied with London at its time at about 1000 AD. It was definitely the largest in the northern hemisphere, and it was just right over here across from St. Louis, mostly East St. Louis, and in that area, it's I think the third largest pyramid. It's a dirt mound pyramid in the world. So there's a significant civilization there, but that marked the transition from a hunter-gatherer type of a culture that followed around herds and was living this life that was really in balance with their natural environment, to moving into this agriculture system where they were stationary and they had to create bureaucracy. They had a need to start to begin to create symbol systems to represent ownership and property value, and start to delineate mine and yours. And that experiment ran its course and it totally collapsed due to their degradation to their immediate ecological system. They deforested, which led to erosion, which led to habitat destruction, which led to a complete collapse of their ecological system that supported that civilization, and it collapsed. So they ran that whole paradigm through on a local scale right there. So we're doing that on a global scale. And when I began all of this, it's been about 10 years ago now, I thought, I'm going to live by example, and I'm going to show it to people, and then people will say, yes, you can do it, and things are going to change. I'm unfortunately looking at the landscape now, and probably mainly because of the 2008 economic collapse. People took their eye off the ball right at that time, and there was a lot of hope and momentum running up towards that was dashed, where people just were looking for jobs and ways to survive, and we really haven't made it out of that. But the unfortunate thing is, I'm afraid that this idea of implementing these practices as a way to avert this climate change has passed, and these practices now should be even more important than ever as a means of survival going forward. And again, you know, Bucky was so wise in foreseeing this and saying, don't try to fight the existing reality, and don't spend your time, you know, railing in a negative way against what's wrong with everything. Step outside of that and start to proactively create something that will be more attractive and could possibly, you know, replace that paradigm. Another thing happened in my personal life between last year speaking at this event and now. My wife got diagnosed with cancer, and you know, of course, everyone believes that there is no cure for cancer, and you know, technology and science and innovation is desperately seeking to find the cure for cancer. This sounds absurd, but there is a cure for cancer, and it's the same exact cure for the climate change problem. It's the same exact cure for all of our modern problems, and it's striking a balance with the natural environment. We discovered, just through happenstance on Netflix, a documentary about Max Gerson's therapy regimen. It's a documentary called A Beautiful Truth, and I like that a lot better than Inconvenient Truths. I mean, it's a beautiful truth that if you eliminate all of the environmental toxins from yourself and follow his regimen, you eliminate cancer from your life. My wife was looking at having to have double mastectomy, hysterectomy. She did have her thyroid removed before we found out that there is another alternative way. And through having followed this Gerson therapy for just 4 or 5 months now, she had a sonogram of previous tumors. The largest one being about the size of an orange. All of the small tumors are gone. The one that was the size of an orange is now only the size of a grape. Skin cancer, she was covered with malignant looking and very suspicious moles. Those, I didn't even know moles could leave. Her moles are disappearing off of her body.
Wow.
This is a very difficult diet and everything to adhere to, but I just wanted to highlight this because, you know, in a lot of ways, through language, we're being fooled into thinking to say there is no cure for cancer. That means that there's not some sort of procedure or some sort of a pill that you're going to be able to take and continue to live in a way that gives you cancer that's going to stop you from getting cancer. You cannot live the way that we're living and not have global climate change occur. There has to be a behavioral change. We have all the information, we have all the science in place, and we've had it for a long time, but behavior doesn't change. And it's, again, I'm going to come back to that idea of mythology. I've been watching the Cosmos show on the Fox channel. You know, that redo of Carl Sagan's with Neil deGrasse Tyson now. And, you know, I was aggravated at it because, like, the first 3 episodes, you could see him railing against these ideas of, like, astronomy and astrology and religion and superstition. And I was really frustrated, and I was talking to a lot of different people about it. Like, why does he have to go there? Why do they have to waste time on that? And I didn't understand it, but it was explained to me that there's a lot of people who, you know, deny climate change and deny even evolution, and they do it on the basis of, you know, religious tradition and, you know, the Bible and things of this nature. And, you know, that was the audience that he was speaking to. And I imagine that he's pretty frustrated, and you could tell it came across. But that's kind of a negative message. But, you know, that right there is evidence of the power of mythology. That is our current mythology, that Judeo-Christian biblical tradition, that is stronger than the scientific facts. Like, people will go to that because it has meaning behind it. You know, it has why behind it, not just how. So, you know, what we need right now is that attractive model that expresses the beauty of this gift that we're given, you know, by the Creator to be stewards of, and to take care of, and how it cures cancer. And when you create structures that are in harmony with the same blueprints that create, using sacred geometry and phi ratios to imbue those into your living environments and your built structures, that they're also very beautiful structures and that give you a good sense of mental peace and presence within those. That's what we did, pardon me, with the house. So in all of that, I had spent several years lecturing to engineers. I talked at the annual meeting of the Illinois Society of Professional Engineers about sustainable home design. And those lectures all involved a lot of math, a lot of this breaking down of the calculation of the sun angles and the phi ratios and the sacred geometry calculating and how it's derived from the transit and motions of the planets. And when you start talking like that to people, they glaze over. And I think that the same thing happens. You can't lecture about math for 2 or 3 hours.
No.
You can't do it. The people stop listening after about 10 minutes, right? If they even listen that long. Kind of the same is true about the whole, the figures and the facts behind the science. So, once I realized that, I started trying to create artwork that would touch people on an emotional level, which is the same way that mythology functions. They, spent multiple generations observing the natural world, observing these cycles, observing the motions of the planets and how they were tied to the seasonal changes and how, it takes generations of mathematicians and observers to suss all of that out. Well, people don't have the patience for that, so they took all of that knowledge and they anthropomorphized it. They put human faces on it. This is what Margaret Fuller understood. And this is what she lit the whole transcendental movement with. You anthropomorphize these huge topics. You give them a human component. That's why these characters in mythology, you have Zeus and everybody, they represent a planet and they represent a package of attributes. You can connect with them emotionally because they're humanized. Now, these ancient people did not believe, like, for example, the native people of this country refer to grandmother spider having wove a web of creation that material reality formed on like little dewdrops, okay? As a beautiful, poetic way of describing the same exact thing that Buckminster Fuller described through math and science and engineering, through describing this geodesic lattice that permeates everything, that explains why the geodesic dome is the most efficient means of enclosing a volume of space. See, he spoke about the same thing. Now, these native people did not believe that there was an actual spider at work that was responsible for creating material reality. That was a metaphor that you would be able to communicate with each other across the fire and imbue with emotional content that you'd be able to remember and pass on through an oral tradition. That's the function of the mythology. It's not, myth is truth. Myth is the absolute truth. It is the imbuing of why things are the way they are. It provides meaning. So with all of that in mind, I thought, I started making this artwork and I built it out of reclaimed materials and old vintage signage that had messages about consumerism on it, eat, drink, enjoy, Coke, Pepsi, oil companies and things. So I deconstructed them, I cut them up, and then I reconfigured them, reconstructed them into patterns that evoke the building blocks of nature to try to, and they end up looking beautiful, and they're made out of complete junk. And they're beautiful because they express this geometry of the environment that we've evolved in over eons that supports us, sustains us, and loves us, and we associate goodness with it. So what, in my mind, I was doing was taking the spell that had been cast by the initial, original call to consumerism on the advertising, breaking the spell and recasting it in support of the natural world. And it's really interesting to see how fast that took off. with people. And I touched, I don't know, 100-fold more people than talking to them about math and the problem, this looming boogeyman of a problem that exists. I know it doesn't, get immediate action, but it starts to lay this groundwork that the change that needs to happen can grow forth out of. We still need activism, we still need technological innovation, we still need divestment, all those things need to happen. But for it to become this cultural whole change, there needs to be this mythology that reconnects us with our natural environment. And unfortunately, science is the thing that has severed us, that relationship with our natural environment. Science is built entirely on objectivity. And the biggest cardinal sin within performing a scientific experiment is doing anthropomorphizing, is to applying emotional, everything that we know about being human through our personal experience and applying that to animals, or applying that to the environment, or applying that to the natural world. You have to be objective and you don't anthropomorphize. Well, that takes the spirit out of the world. The world becomes nothing more than a collection of commodities. Well, who cares about a bunch of stuff and commodities? We can take as much as we want, do what we want with it. It's just a bunch of material stuff. Couldn't be more wrong. And I think science, for all the miracles that it's brought us, it's telecommunications, and I hope to utilize those with video in this talk, but it has also disconnected us from the spiritual aspect of our world. It has objectified it. It is not an object, it's a living thing. And if we start seeing it that way again, we will be not quite so ready to destroy it, degrade it, and take it for granted, because we're only doing it to ourselves, obviously. A project that I put together recently while I've moved into an office in Bucky's Center for Spirituality and Sustainability in Edwardsville. It's a 3/4 geodesic dome that is translucent. When you're inside of it, you can look out of it. And him and Soji Sadao tinted the continents on it. And this dome straddles the 90th longitudinal meridian, which is the only meridian that goes around the full circle of the planet. It is the 90th east and west. So it's this great circle that goes around the entire planet, and Bucky used that as a metaphor to unite us and break up boundaries. It was the spine of his Dymaxion map. Normal classroom maps, the equator is the reference point. So you see, you're used to seeing, Africa's over there on the right, and the, Japan and China's over there on the left, and there's these vast oceans in between us and them. So they're very different than us, and we didn't have any exchange until the advent of the modern, the technology and everything that's allowed us to bridge these oceans. That's false. Anthropologists use Buckminster Fuller's Dymaxion map, which the North Pole's in the center of it, and the continental mass splays out from that point, and you can very easily see that we're on an island, and we all share this same space together, and then we're not tribal, we're not us and them, and we're one. And he has that on this 3/4 dome there in Edwardsville that straddles the 90th longitudinal meridian. So when you're standing in the center of it and you look up, the position that you are on the actual globe is the same position that you're looking at overhead on the model globe. So it's a powerful, powerful place. I encourage everyone to go check it out if you haven't. When you go there and you do that, it's very transcendent. You see your place in the world. You not only see your place in the world, you see your place in the world from the center of the earth.
Wow.
So you connect with that whole concept that of this unity and this wholeness that we need to reconnect with. It's Bucky's Cathedral. It's right over there in Edwardsville, and so I want more people to know about it. So I contacted artists that I've met since exhibiting down in Miami at Art Basel. I designed a sustainable home for a pretty famous artist named Dose Green, and met some people through him. And I recently contacted them all and said, how about a mural project that spans the 90th meridian as it travels through the United States? It goes through, conveniently enough, right through New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Cahokia, East St. Louis. It goes through Dixon Mounds, and it goes then up through Frank Lloyd Wright Studio, Taliesin. It goes through Lake Superior. It goes on up over the North Pole. It goes through Siberia, Russia, Bhutan, Tibet, Lhasa, Tibet, to boot, Calcutta, India. Then it comes up through Guatemala City, the Olmec, capital of the Mayan culture, and then it comes up through Mexico back to New Orleans. So I thought if we could take the U.S. branch of that to start with and put a mural in New Orleans, Jackson, Memphis, East St. Louis, Cahokia, and so on, up to Taliesin, that would help to bring awareness to, Bucky's legacy, to the environmental problems that exist in each of those locations. Like, for example, New Orleans, they need to replace the natural marshlands that are there to protect that city. And so that's 7 locations, and they're about equally spaced. So 7 conveniently tied in and correlated with the 7 chakra points within the human body. So we have the locations. Each location represents a chakra. Each location is going to have an artist. And again, conveniently enough, the bottom chakra would be survival, and that's at New Orleans. And that city's identity is totally permeated with the concept of survival. It's threatened. So then the next one up would be Jackson, Mississippi. That's the sacral or sex or fertility spot. And it's in Jackson, Mississippi, is in the Mississippi Delta. And even if you just wiki it or Google it, it says this is some of the most fertile land in the planet. It is deposited here by the Mississippi River. So that works, and it has a deep history of racism from the the African population that got imported, stolen there, and enslaved to work in that fertile land. Then in the 1960s, of course, Emmett Till got murdered, lynched there for flirting with a white woman, and then Medgar Evers, came down. He got killed defending Emmett Till. Freedom riders all got arrested there, and all of that racism is fear of the integration sexually of different racial groups. So their whole crisis is through sex. And then, this probably will take too long to go through every single one, but I encourage you to check it out. It's called Murals on the Meridian, and it's got a Facebook page, and there's a page in development called 90thmeridian.com that's going to break it all down. And I have a website, benjaminlowder.com, that has the whole breakdown of the sustainable home design, sacred geometry, examples of the artwork that I exhibited, starting last year in this show called Myth, Math, and Magic.